Hi, 5th graders. Welcome to Lesson 7.3, Fraction and Whole Number Multiplication. The essential question for this lesson is, how can you find the product of a fraction and a whole number without using a model? Now, go ahead and open up in your Go Math workbooks to Lesson 7.3, found on page 149, and let's get started. Now, let's take a look at question number 2. For question 2, the directions say to find the product and to write the product in simplest form. Well, for question 2, they give us the fraction 2/9 times the whole number 3. Well, our first step is going to be this. We're going to focus on that whole number factor, which is a 3, and we need to rewrite that as 3 over 1. So we're going to put that whole number in fraction form. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite the problem. We have 2/9, and now we're going to multiply that by the whole number 3, but we're going to turn that into a fraction and make it 3 over 1. Now our next step is going to be this. We now need to multiply the numerators together. So I'm going to multiply my 2 times my 3. So we're going to multiply straight across, numerator times numerator. Well, when I multiply 2 times 3, I know that 2 times 3 is going to give me 6. So my numerator here is going to be a 6. Now our next step is this. We're now going to focus on the denominators. So we're going to multiply the 9 times the 1. Once again, we're going to multiply straight across, denominator times denominator. Well, I know that 9 times 1 is going to give me 9. So I'm going to go ahead and write down my 9 as my denominator. Now my last step is this. I need to focus on my product, my answer here, which is 6/9, and ask myself, is that product in simplest form? Well, what I know is if I have both a 6 and a 9, I can divide both a 6 and a 9 by a 3. So I'm going to go ahead and divide both those numbers by 3. And I know that 6 divided by 3 is going to give me 2. So I'm now going to write that 2 as my numerator. And I know that 9 divided by 3 is going to give me 3. So I'm going to write that 3 now as my denominator. So when I multiply 2/9 times 3, my product turns out to be in simplest form, 2/3. And we now have our answer. Now let's take a look at question number 4. Once again, our job is to find the product and to write that product in simplest form. Well, for question 4, they give us 3/4 times the whole number 9. Once again, I'm going to first of all focus on that whole number factor here, which is a 9, and I'm going to rewrite that factor as 9 over 1. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to begin to rewrite our problem. So we have 3/4, and now we're going to once again turn that factor, that whole number factor 9, into 9 over 1. So I'm going to rewrite that as 9 over 1. Now, once we put that 9 over the 1, our next step is this. We're now going to focus on multiplying the numerators together. So numerator times numerator, straight across. I know that 3 times 9 is going to give me 27. So I'm going to go ahead and write down 27 as my numerator. Now my next step is to focus on my denominators. So I'm going to multiply the 4 times the 1. Once again, it's straight across. I know that 4 times 1 is going to give me 4, so I'm going to go ahead and write down 4 as my denominator in my product. Now my last step is to ask myself, is my answer in simplest form? Well, what I have is, I have 27/4, which is an improper fraction. So I can't leave my answer as an improper fraction. But what I know is this. I know that 4 can go into 27 6 whole times. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write down the whole number 6. Now I know that 6 times 4 is going to give me 24, which means I would have 3 remaining or left over. So that 3 is going to become my numerator, and remember, our denominator is going to stay the same. So I'm going to go ahead and write my denominator as a 4. So when I turn that improper fraction 27/4 into my mixed number, I end up with 6 and 3/4. And because the fraction part is 3/4, I know I can't simplify any further, so we now have our product. So I know that when I multiply 3/4 times the whole number 9, our product in simplest form turns out to be 6 and 3/4. Now let's take a look at question number 6. Once again, we're going to find the product, and we're going to write that product in its simplest form. For question 6, we're now multiplying the whole number 7 times the fraction 1/2. Once again, our first step is going to be to focus on that whole number factor, which is 7, and we're going to rewrite that as 7 over 1. So let's go ahead and begin to rewrite that problem. So I'm going to take my 7 and I'm going to make that 7 over 1, and I'm going to multiply that by the fraction 1/2. Now, once I've dealt with that whole number factor and made it 7 over 1, we're now going to work on multiplying the numerators together. So I'm going to multiply my 7 times my 1, and once again it's just multiplying straight across, numerator times numerator. Well, I know that 7 times 1 is going to give me 7, so I'm going to go ahead and make that 7 the numerator of my product. Now our next step is to multiply the denominators, so I'm going to multiply my 1 times my 2, and once again we're multiplying straight across, denominator times denominator. I know that 1 times 2 is going to give me 2, so that 2 becomes the denominator in my product. Now my answer is 7/2, or 7 over 2, which means I have an improper fraction. So we have to now turn that into a mixed number answer. Well, what I know is 2 goes into 7 3 whole times, so I'm going to go ahead and write that 3 down as the whole number part of my mixed number. And I also know that 3 times 2 gives me 6, so that means I have 1 remaining, or 1 left over. So that 1 is going to become my numerator, and once again your denominator stays the same. So we're going to keep that 2 a 2 over here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and write my 2 down. So what I know is my answer in simplest form, when I multiply 7 times 1/2, turns out to be the mixed number 3 and 1/2, because once I have 1/2, I can't simplify any further. Now let's take a look at question number 8. Once again, we're going to find the product, and we're going to write that product in its simplest form. Well, for question 8, they give us the whole number 9 times the fraction 2/3. Now, once again, I'm going to focus on that whole number factor, which is a 9, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite that 9 as 9 over 1. So I'm going to go ahead and begin to rewrite my problem. So 9 is now going to become 9 over 1, and I'm multiplying that by the fraction 2/3. Now that I have my whole number factor rewritten as 9 over 1, we're now going to focus on solving the problem. My next step is this. We're going to focus once again on those numerators, my 9 and my 2. So we're going to multiply straight across, numerator times numerator, 9 times 2, and when I do that, that's going to give us 18. So we're going to make 18 the numerator in the product. Now our next step is to focus on the denominators. I have a 1 and a 3. Remember, once again, we're multiplying straight across, denominator times denominator. I know that 1 times 3 is going to give me 3, so I'm going to go ahead and write down that 3 as my denominator in the product. Now, when I look at my answer, I have 18/3, which is an improper fraction. So I know that I have to turn that into a mixed number answer. Well, what I know is 3 can go into 18 6 whole times. So I'm going to go ahead and make that 6 my whole number. Now, what I also know is this. 6 times 3 is 18 with no remaining or leftovers. So my product turns out to be the whole number 6 in simplest form. So 9 times the fraction 2/3 gives me a product of the whole number 6. Now let's take a look at question number 10. Once again, we're going to find our product, and we're going to write that product in simplest form. Well, for question 10, they give us the whole number 4 times the fraction 3/8. Now, what I'd like you to do is this. I want you to think about our first step. How would you rewrite this problem thinking about the whole number part of our problem, which is the factor 4? So go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to go ahead and rewrite that problem so we're ready to begin solving. Now, you should have rewritten the whole number factor 4 as 4 over 1, and we're going to multiply now 4 over 1 times the fraction 3/8. Now remember, once we've rewritten that whole number factor as 4 over 1, we're now going to focus on multiplying those numerators together. So I'm going to multiply 4 times 3, and 4 times 3 is going to give me 12. So I'm going to go ahead and write the 12 down. Now, after we've multiplied those numerators, we're now going to focus on multiplying the denominators together. Well, I know that 1 times 8 is going to give me 8. So I now have the improper fraction 12/8 as my product. Well, we know that we can't leave our answer as an improper fraction, so we're going to go ahead and turn that into a mixed number. I know that 8 goes into 12 one whole time, so I'm going to go ahead and make 1 the whole number part of my answer, and I know this. I know that 1 times 8 is going to give me 8. So that means I have 4 left over. So that 4 is going to become my numerator, And once again, your denominator stays the same. So I'm going to go ahead and make my denominator an 8. Now, I have 1 and 4/8. And the thing is, if I have 1 and 4/8, I know that 1 and 4/8 can still simplify down to 1 and 1/2 because I can divide both a 4 and an 8 by 4. And when I do that, I end up with 1 and 1/2 as my answer in simplest form. Now let's take a look at question number 13. It's one of our real-world problem-solving questions, and it says, Leah makes aprons to sell at a craft fair. She needs 3/4 yard of material to make each apron. How much material does Leah need to make 6 aprons? So what we know we have is this. We know that she needs 3/4 of a yard of material to make each apron, and we want to know how much material she needs to make 6 aprons. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that whole number 6, so we have 6 aprons, and for each of those aprons she needs 3/4 yard of material to create each of those aprons. Now my first step is going to be this. We know that we have to focus on that whole number factor here, which is a 6, and we're going to rewrite that as 6/1. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite our problem as 6/1 times the fraction 3/4. Now, once again, I'm now going to focus on those numerators, which in this case are a 6 and a 3. I know that 6 times 3 is going to give me 18, so I'm going to go ahead and write down an 18 as the numerator in the product. Now, my next step is to focus on the denominators. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply 1 times 4, and I know that 1 times 4 is going to give me 4. So we now have the improper fraction 18/4. Well, we know we can't leave an improper fraction as our final answer, so we need to go ahead and rewrite that as a mixed number in simplest form. I know that 4 goes into 18 4 whole times, so I'm going to go ahead and write down the whole number 4 as the whole number part of my mixed number, and I know that 4 times 4 gives me 16. So when I take 16 away from 18, I'm left with 2. So I'm going to make that 2 my numerator, and remember, our denominator stays the same. So I'm going to go ahead and write my denominator as a 4. Well, what I know is this. If we have 4 and 2/4, we know that 4 and 2/4, when you divide by 2, simplifies to 4 and 1/2. So we know that she needs 4 and 1/2 yards to create 6 aprons. Now, let's take a look at question number 14. It says the gas tank of Mr. Tanaka's car holds 15 gallons of gas. He used 2/3 of a tank of gas last week. How many gallons of gas did Mr. Tanaka use? So what we know is this. We know that Mr. Tanaka's car holds 15 gallons of gas. We also know that he used 2/3 of a tank of gas last week. So we want to know how many gallons of gas Mr. Tanaka used. So what we have to find is we have to find 2/3 of 15. Now remember, once again, that little word of just means to multiply. Now, what I'm going to do first is this. We need to focus on that whole number factor here, which is a 15, and we're going to turn that into 15 over 1. So let's go ahead and rewrite our problem. We have 2/3 times 15 over 1. Now, once we rewrite the problem, the next step is going to be to focus on multiplying those numerators. Straight across, I know that 2 times 15 is going to give me 30. So I'm going to go ahead and write down 30 as my numerator. Now we're going to focus on our denominators. Once again, straight across, I know that 3 times 1 is going to give me 3. So I'm going to go ahead and write down 3 as my denominator. So our product turns out to be 30/3. Now, once again, that's an improper fraction, so we can't leave our final answer as 30/3. So what we're going to do is this. I know that 3 goes into 30 10 whole times, so I'm going to go ahead and write down 10 as the whole number part of my answer. Now I know, though, that 10 times 3 gives me exactly 30, with no remaining or left over. So what that means is, we know that Mr. Tanaka used 10 gallons of gas, and that becomes our final answer. Now, as your homework for tonight, I want you guys to complete question number 1 and question number 2, along with numbers 3 through 6 found in your Go Math workbook on page 150. Don't forget, somewhere on your homework page, I want you to assess yourself. Do you feel like you're number 1, a novice, number 2, an apprentice, number 3, a practitioner, or number 4, an expert? Don't forget, your homework will be to complete question number 1 and number 2, as well as numbers 3 through 6 found in your Go Math workbook on page 150. We hope you have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you in class tomorrow.